Hi again. Let's do this thing. I'm gonna wait. Here we go. Billy's not here this time. Well, he's here, but he's downstairs. Hi. I had to go find the question from last week because it was such a good question. And whoever wrote it forgot to go put it in the comment box. I forgive you, though, because it was such a good question. I'm not going to answer that. You were right. Do you like being right? Or was that the one time you wished you were wrong and I answered it? Hi. I actually do have something today while we wait for people to come in. Remember this guy? I started my love affair with David Whyte back in I think I found him in 2019. Oh, from Turkey. Hi. Hello, everyone. So I fell in love with David Whyte back in 2019, and then I started sharing it here in some interviews, and I found the OG again. And so I did that I love just opening up books and reading where I land. Isn't he so good? He's so good. Denver, I love it. Thank you. Vancouver. UK, we're at in the UK. Oakville, okay. Oh, that's somewhat different. San Antonio, Texas. I'm gonna be going back to Texas here soon. Not permanently, but to see my family. All of my family is in Texas. It is hot there. We feel hot here in San Diego, but it's not even hot. Those of you that know hot would make fun of us. Manchester, so cool. Australia, I know you, or I know your name. LA, Toronto. All right. Okay, so this is the one I just opened up to, and it's actually so good, so I'm going to read it, and it's actually super short. So if you haven't heard of David Whyte, go check him out. This man, his ability to use language is just unparalleled. And then we're going to jump into questions like we do. Okay, so let's read this. It's called Second Sight. Sometimes you need the ocean light and colors you've never seen before painted through an evening sky. Sometimes you need your God to be a simple invitation, not a telling word of wisdom. Sometimes you need only the first shyness that comes from being shown things far beyond your understanding, so that you can fly and become free, and by being still here. God, so good. And then there are times you need to be brought to the ground by touch, and touch alone, to know those arms around you and to make your home in the world just by being wanted, to see those eyes looking back at you as eyes should see you at last. Seeing you as you always wanted to be seen, seeing you as yourself had always wanted to see the world. Feel that for a second. That's profound. And then he always writes, or in this book, a couple of his books actually, he writes little explanations or addendums to the poems. This is a book, David Whyte, Essentials. It's one of my most favorite. I have 3 of these. I have one in my car for the ocean. I have one in my house. I have one to give to strangers that need it. It's my most favorite thing. But this is his little excerpt on the side. The sense of the loved ones seeing themselves through the intensity with which you are seeing them, and the reciprocation of that seeing is the essence of the mutual loving gaze. It is not confined to the merely human. Looking intensely at a landscape or the ocean, the give and take of the shoreline where two meet, we fall in love, and perhaps equally even find ourselves with a sense of being loved by the tidal essence of the world that we inhabit. So good. And we talk about this all the time, even with your life as your medicine, and how you engage with life, and how you interpret life is going to change the medicine that you receive. And you can have two people standing at the same ocean, experiencing the exact same moment, and they are going to interpret that differently. And therefore, their hormones and neurotransmitters and chemicals that are in circulation within their blood are going to translate that into a feeling, a sensation, an emotion so differently. And so when we talk about individuality and we talk about the self, you've got to go into the complexity of what it is to be a human, and there is a true physiological composition that creates how you feel. And so feeling isn't just this non-literal thing, but if we actually went down into it, there's this very literal language that the body composes and speaks through, and that's translated into the blood. And the reason we're bringing this up is because of the question that we're going to go into today, because your life is your medicine, which is this super profound phrase. If you really go into it, if you take it to every direction you could possibly take that phrase, you would barely touch the meaning held within it. And that's why I say take it in every direction you can imagine, because that's what blew my mind and my heart wide open when I really started investigating truth in medicine. And so then when we're talking about your life as your medicine, it's not just, only the good things in life are your medicine, only the healthy things, only the positive things, only when you're being playful, only when you're being happy. It's every single breath of a life is medicating and therefore translating into the chemistry, the biochemistry, and the physiology of the human being experiencing that life. And no two lives are the same, no two memories are the same, no two experiences are the same. And so that's where the complexity comes from, because you're trying to distill down the human to one thing that you can put into something so that you can give it to people and tell them what to do. So the reason that this can't be done that way is just the same as two people standing at the ocean literally are not making the same chemistry. Maybe it would be similar depending on, how you primed them, but those two people would not have the same chemistry. And so they're not interpreting that input the same, therefore they're not experiencing the same effect, right? So you could generalize, extreme generalization, and get, puppies tend to make people happy and spiders tend to freak people out. But then you're going to find the random person that loves spiders and the random person that hates puppies. And so, but when you're in the world of medicine, you're really trying to generalize so that you can sell and give and tell people what to do. And so the poetry of this medicine is very practical as well, is to understand that yes, there are these general things like sunlight and what we call the rules, the way the body actually is going to interface if you were to take the mind and the emotions out of the picture, right? But you're never going to get that in real life. And so that's where you have to have the wisdom to combine both of these things and know the poetry of living, and then the practicality of just how a body would function. Like, what does alcohol do in a body? Okay, well, generally speaking, unless you employ the powers of a mind to such a point to undo that, you're going to get the outcome of alcohol. What does, different compounds, what does water do? And it's just like so many different variables that you can go into. So when we're talking about your life as your medicine, it's with the understanding that there is no moment that's not accounted for within the human body. Your body experiences all of it, even if your conscious mind is not experiencing it. So when we're saying your life is your medicine, it's not just in the application of it, but in the receiving of it. That's why it's like this omnidirectional touch that just like makes your brain explode, because it's what's creating how you feel right now, but then you can also engage with it and employ it as something to change how you feel. So you're like in the meeting point of all of your life has medicated you into this point, and with this understanding, you get to change moving forward the medicine that you choose to engage with, to implement, to experience. And so that's why it's so like, when you come into it, it's not just this like positive thinking phrase. It's very scientific, very practical, and very, very complicated, but we want to simplify it down because life is about the living. Life is not about how much can we manipulate and perfect a life to get what we want from it, to look how we want, to feel how we want. But the whole point is the experiencing of it, which is also going to create the chemistry of it that you're going to receive. And so that's why it gets so cool when you finally grasp this. And the reason we're doing even this is to, when you understand it, then you go back and read some of the stuff that I've written. Then you go back and listen to some of the things that I've said. And it's less poetic, right? And more practical of, oh my goodness, I understand now how that interfaces with me. I create chemistry. Chemistry circulates within my blood. Blood touches all of my cells, my organs, my tissues. That repeated over a prolonged amount of time creates this physiological expression. To change it, I'm not just going to change my food. I'm not just going to get a new supplement. That's not how this game works. That's when you fall into that world of what we call manipulation-based medicine, which is what everyone's pretty familiar with, like even in the world of natural medicine. That's when I started seeing that we were doing it the exact same way. We were just manipulating the human physiology and human biochemistry and the human body with nicer substances. And again, it's not wrong. This is not a place to say that everything else is wrong and this is the only thing that's right. But it's to say that there's a difference between something that's right and something that's true. And here we're wanting liberation from all of it, to say that you're a human, you're a man, you're a woman, but you are not man-made. So to rely on any substances made by man, or to rely on anything that you have to pay to get access to, is not a true expression of health. And so in this bubble, for the next hour or so, this is how we're thinking. We're not in here thinking that anything's bad, but just like I've said in the past, I'm not going to go talk about all these gadgets and stuff because I don't use those things for people. We try to get rid of all of those things. And so it's, again, not that those things are bad, not that it's bad if you want to use it. Part of life is playing with all of it. And so, but there's a big group of people that are seeing through it and that just want something different. And that's what we're doing here. And so when you're wanting truth, that's what started pushing me. I was like, okay, I want the truth of the truth of the truth. And I distilled it down. And then it started, punching holes in my herbalism background. It started punching holes in my nutrition background. It started punching holes in my circadian background. It started punching holes in everything. And I was like, oh no. But I kept going. And then you get to these things and it's all of it incorporated in just a different configuration, right? All of those things still work. It's not that they don't work. It's just that they're not going to be what frees you, because most of the time you're trying to manipulate your body out of the effects of your life. So here we're saying, let's change your life in a true way. Part of that is following those rules that we talk about in my master classes. So when I refer, there were lots of questions about the rules. The rules are just an easy way to say all of the stuff that I talk about in those master classes. But what it really is just distilling down human physiology. So if we were to find the rules of what would happen if you had a shot of tequila, that's basically what I did with nutrition, with light, with sleep, with energy, stress. And so that's what those master classes are, because they are the foundational components of this physiological, practical component of this medicine. And then you're dancing in between all of it, and you're changing. As you go through those rules, you see where you change them, just like how we kind of talked about last week. And then how we went into even more depth over on my subscription page on how you get to break the rules intelligently. Because it's not living a life where you never break the rules. It's living a life where you understand the rules and you break them intelligently when it fits your life. And you also have the wisdom and the understanding to not be hard on a body that shows you the effects of the causes that you're living. So like if you keep breaking the rules, you're gonna have symptoms. And instead of being worried and fearful of your body producing symptoms, you're just gonna be that badass that's like, yeah, I did that. I have a sunburn because I stayed out in the sun too long. I, am drunk because I drank too much alcohol. I have gas, bloating, indigestion, heartburn, constipation, diarrhea because I broke the rules of nutrition. I have hormonal changes because I've been breaking the rules of light. And that's when you start just being in the driver's seat of your life. And that's what, we kind of touched on this last week too. That's going to start alleviating those fears, because when you know that you're in control and you're an active player in this, you can have a sense of humor. I would rather you have a sense of humor and kind of have that like personality of like, yeah, I did that and I'm going to own it, than I'm such a terrible person, I keep screwing up. Why? Like, own it and be playful with it. or change it if you don't like how you feel. Either way, you're more empowered, and either way, you're less fearful, and that's going to change human physiology too. So do you see how this is just like a chain reaction? Like, there are no moments that your body's like, I'm just going to take a break from life right now. I'm just going to chill and not interact. It's impossible. You just step into light and it's going to work. You think one thought, you're going to have a feeling. Your body's always working. It takes no breaths off, no moments off. So this is where you've got to be like, okay, that's a lot to process. The cool thing is you don't have to process most of it. It's when you start producing a lot of what we call healing expressions or your symptoms, the body saying, hey, what you're doing is not working. And if you continue to do this, we're going to have further repercussions. So if you don't mind, can we make some changes so that we can feel a little bit different? So that's something very different than I'm creating symptoms because I'm broken and I'm messed up and I'm screwed up and you need somebody in order to continue this thing that we call life. One is terrifying, one is overwhelming, one is in a state of victimhood and always needing and always outsourcing and having absolutely no power. And the other one is a very intelligent, wise way of being like, okay, there are repercussions to every action. There's repercussions to inaction. That's the world you live in. How are you going to play this game? And if the body does what the body does, just like with alcohol, you've got to think simply. Think with the most simple explanation. Are there two people that, like, one is going to drink alcohol and it will never have an effect? No, but will it have a different effect in their body based on metabolism, all of these? Of course, but that's when you're starting to get into the nuances and the details of stuff that you don't even need to know. You only need to know you and your body, right? You and your body and that input. And you could study this, and one of your questions, was if you don't take the master classes, how would you find this? How would you find out how you handle alcohol? How would you find out how you handle different foods? You would study yourself in a very true way instead of studying yourself in comparison to something that you've learned. Meaning you wouldn't learn something and try to put that information on your experience, because then you're just going to get sucked into whoever you're learning from, and you're either going to end up with a word or a category that you're going to try to fit into, and then everything's going to fall into that umbrella of all the stuff that comes underneath that. So that's what you're in the bubble of. So I just wanted to make that clear, because I think some people that are new here just think that this is positive thinking and play. There's a lot of that because that feels good, and when you feel good, your blood's going to reflect that, and when your blood reflects that, your tissues reflect that. So why the heck not? And the whole point is to be alive and experience life and enjoy life and feel good, and learn and evolve and change while we're here, right? Because why would you want to heal the body? Why would you even want to feel good, right? We got to stay simple in the practicality of why we're even here, and not just get lost in, I'm going to constantly consume information on health and wellness because I'm terrified, because I'm not actually in the driver's seat of my life. Therefore, I can't trust my body, because if you're not driving the car, how can you truly trust the driver, right? If you don't even know who the driver is. Okay, so we're going to start there. I do have a question, but I'm going to go skim through these to make sure we clean up and make sure we're all starting out on the same page, because it's very important that we start out on the same page and understand why we're here and why we're even answering all these questions. Hi, everyone. Hi. So I do have a bunch of podcasts out there. Some of you are asking about the rules with podcasts. I don't talk about the rules really in podcasts, because the rules are more of like my teaching, and that would be a really long educational podcast. I don't think anyone would want to do that. But you can find my rules in my master classes, because that's more of the practical, do this, don't do this, ask this. That's not really conducive to those podcast platforms. Okay. All right, so I think we're all on the same page. Hi. Okay, so then the question, we're going to pick up from last week. I don't know who asked the question, but I had to go listen to the tail end of my video last week to find it, because it was a really good question. So the question was, is it better to get a scan and find out that it is fine, because of the fear of what if is in the back of my mind, or just keep applying truths. So here's the thing. This medicine is not just wishful thinking. It's not just utilizing even the placebo effect, which you could do as a human being. That's a very valuable thing to understand and to implement. But that's not what this medicine is. This medicine is saying, with the understanding that most people are not as in control of their mind as we would want to be, right? And we can be eventually, to employ something as powerful as the placebo effect. So with that being said, how can we get true results in a very practical way with the understanding that majority of the minds out there are polluted with fear and polluted with, you can say propaganda or whatever you want to call it, a lot of information that's not true about healing, about the human body, about wellness, about the power of the human being. And so with that understanding, that's what we're working with. So when it comes to something like this, is it better to just get a scan, even if, so the debate here is you're wanting to believe your life is your medicine. You're wanting to believe that you don't need to rely on any doctor, any prescription, any surgeon, anything like that, but you haven't put in the work to where you trust this lifestyle in this way of living and even this belief enough to where it brings you safety and security. And so then you experience a symptom, and the symptom creates enough fear or anxiety in you that you want to seek relief. And the relief that we're accustomed to seeking is in the hands of a medical establishment or a practitioner. So that's what I'm assuming is in this question. Like, I want to believe this. I'm kind of on the fence. You're probably living very clean, doing a lot of healthy things, understanding light, understanding nutrition, probably done the master classes and are doing the rules, right? And probably have seen a lot of things changing. So your question is, do I just keep going, or do I go and quench this anxiety and this fear in me through using the medical industry or a practitioner? And I would say that when this medicine is used, it's not that we're not using those measurement tools to like stick it to them or to hope our way out of it. When I did this medicine personally, and then the first few years of practice, we would very much use labs and imaging based on the individual I was working with. Because here's the deal. For some people, they could not overcome their mind in that scenario. And it's not a problem with the person. That's what you've got to look at it as. And this is where you just have to be brutally honest with yourself, beautifully honest with yourself. And you would have to get to know you. How much is that poisoning you every single day? Because if you're a person that literally cannot get it out of your system as this alarm is going off, I swear, every single week. Last week, it was like, what, an ant? Okay, so the alarm is off. So we're going to kind of circle back here. So if you've got to get to know yourself and be very, very honest with yourself, because if you're poisoning yourself with fear every single day, just like we put an IV of adrenaline and cortisol in you all day long, you are actually going to give so much more momentum going against your goal that you would be better off going and having one, because I'm sure going to the hospital or going to your practitioner creates stress too, because you're conflicted, right? And peace comes through certainty in what it is you say you believe in, and then matching that with living in accordance with that belief. So if you're anywhere fragmented, you're not going to have that security and that certainty that you're desiring. So we're going to kind of pick this apart. I think this question is going to take this whole time because there's so much to unpack here. So you would have to get to know you and be like, okay, just make it super simple. If you don't go get this scan, how much of your day is saturated in fear? And then give yourself the answer. If you go and get the scan and it comes back normal, how much are you going to torture yourself with, I told you so, I can't believe you don't believe in blah, blah, blah? Or would you use it, and then it's all how you use the situation. because you could turn both of those scenarios into medicine. And this medicine, when I work with people, it's not that we hope that we're doing it well and we just don't ever look at labs and imaging. It's that you realize once you get in it that you don't need it. But I liked, because I was a practitioner and I had to play the game, right, in medicine. So the game is that you have to prove the results with their tools, okay? So it's not that all of the results came and we just said, oh, they feel better. And I've got the labs and imaging to show exactly why, right? In their language, not that we needed it. They knew they were better because they felt better. They had more energy. There were changes in their skin. There were changes in their hair. There was changes in all these other things. They didn't need the labs and imaging, but we got the labs and imaging sometimes to kind of stick it to all the people that said they couldn't, because it does feel kind of good a little bit when they say that it's impossible, you can't do it, and oh, you're gonna go listen to that person, and then we do it in half the time that they could ever even imagine doing it, and then we prove it to them because they need the proof with their standards, their reference ranges, their labs, their imaging, because it's not that this is a diluted medicine. This is the most powerful medicine on the planet. Nature is the most powerful force there is. That's what you're working with. So it's not that you shy away from it because you just hope and fearfully want to avoid the fact that it could still be there. If that's you would be the one that needs to go, and then you need to go into that scenario of getting the scan, getting the labs, and working on you in that setting and being like, why do you need this so much? And what does that say about how you're living? What does that say about your belief systems? Are they borrowed beliefs, or are you living in accordance to where you're creating and establishing and compiling the evidence required for a brain to be like, okay, no, this makes sense? Because it's not that you're going to hope your way into this. Hope is important, but it's also kind of dangerous. You're going to work your way into this. You're going to live in a way where it seems absolutely absurd to go get imaging and labs. Why? Because what am I looking? I'm more energized. I'm more creative. I'm better in every single area of my life. I get to do whatever I want to the degree that I want to do it, right? So then you're just in a different mindset. But when you're going through symptoms, sometimes, especially, you've got to be honest with yourself, because there's some personalities that are just like, no, I will never go. It gives me more stress to show up than any peace I could ever get. And I don't even trust it because they understand, sensitivity and all these flaws within the lab testing and all of this overdiagnosing that we get even within imaging and how much the body fluctuates and changes. And so depending on where you're at on that whole spectrum is going to determine whether or not it brings you peace. And so everything you have to do in your life is not this white knuckle grip of, I'm going to just not look at labs and imaging and be fearful every single day of my life and expect that my body's going to heal. That's a really uncomfortable, and it doesn't make sense. You would be better off having that day, go get the labs and imaging, right? Again, this is it depends on the person, depends on the truth of the person. Going and getting it and being like, okay, now what? What are you going to do about it? So then you've got to go into the personality of, okay, worst case scenario, now what? Best case scenario, now what? And what people often find, and what I often experience with working with people with all sorts of words and all sorts of imaging and all sorts of labs, was that even when they got the clean scan, even when they got the perfect labs, all within the little normal reference ranges, which is a whole different conversation on where we get those and how often those change and all of that nonsense. But even with the perfect labs, even with the perfect imaging, they had peace of mind for maybe a week, some a day, and then some not at all. Their fear snapped right back right when they got back in the car. Everything's good. Well, then I'm off. So then it must be something mysterious, that labs and imaging. And then they go deeper and deeper, and they get into the genetic testing, all the zebra testing to find something, because they just need to find something, because they need there to be an answer to their fear, right? And so this is where you've really got to get to know yourself, and you've got to know where you fall in the spectrum of, are you living a life where the effect makes it impossible to create the thing that you're afraid of? Or are you living a life where the effect could potentially create the thing that you're afraid of? And then how committed and consistent and determined are you to change your life so that you change the effect? Or are you the personality that's like, I don't want to get uncomfortable in my life. I don't want to look at all these other areas. I want to keep doing things that I am doing and just eat healthy, add supplements, add herbs, manipulate myself out of the truth of my life, and then go and get reassurance through somebody that quote unquote knows more than me, and through scans, through labs, through imaging. So that's why there's a slippery slope here with giving this message, because a lot of people take it as if you ever use any of those measuring tools that you're wrong, but you can use it all to your advantage. You just start, when you really get into this, you start even rethinking what emergencies are. It changes your life when you are the one living it. If you're just reading it, that it doesn't apply to you. And you're gonna have to continue however you do things. And then as you change your life, it's just naturally going to seep into your cells and how you think, and it literally changes you. And it's going to change how you think. It's going to change how you behave. It's going to change how you interact. It's going to change what you're afraid of. It's going to change how you interpret different physiological changes in your body. And then when you change how you experience it, just like we started talking about in the beginning, you literally change your chemistry, which changes what's in circulation in your blood. So that's why this thing is more complex than you would even know. And so it's like this cute poetic language that I put out there, but there's a very practical, very rational, literal science woven into this. But what I've seen is a lot of people are trapped and imprisoned by intellectual understanding, and the truths happen even if that's how the body works. So you don't even have to know, like, okay, well, what's the chemistry happening from this? What's the exact chemistry happening from this? No, just think about it simply. Implement it simply. Because, again, just like we talked about, those people in the blue zones and all of these studies about the people that live the longest, it's not what they were eating. It wasn't the supplements they were taking. It was all of the moments woven in, and the stuff that you couldn't quantify, the stuff that you can't, put into a pill, the stuff that they'll never ask questions about, right? And so you've got to understand that that's life, and nutrition, and hydration, and movement, and light, and sleep, because you're a human being that's on a very physical plane, that has very physical rules, right? So when you're dealing with something like this, I would have to ask you, I don't know. So let's put it back to you. Whoever wrote this question, it's a beautiful question. Right now, is your state of fear so intense that you would get more peace and more relief from going and doing the thing that you say that you're against, right? Would it give you more peace? If yes, go do it. And then make it medicine. So then how would you, if you're like, okay, yeah, I just can't, my mind has to see it. Okay, perfect. Then you're probably one of the people too that after you see it, you're going to find another reason or another little tiny thing to continue to worry about. So if that were the case, I would say go get it, go see what it is, comes back, because a lot of you were writing that you went and had a scare or misdiagnosed or all these different things. Okay, so it comes back and it was fine, right? The imaging is clear, the labs are normal, everything is fine. So then it puts you in the driver's seat of what was driving your fear then? Your belief, then I would go strengthen that belief. Your lifestyle, then I would go change wherever in your life that you're like, man, we could do better. Because we all have something. We all have some area where we're like, yeah, if I wanted to, if I was really backed into a corner, I would change this, this, and this. But I'm not backed into a corner, so I'm not going to do it, right? So then that's where you would evaluate your life, make the changes in your life to change your physiology. And then for every single person I've ever worked with, work on the mind at the same time, because you're going to have to live in a way that earns your respect. You're going to have to live in a way that earns your certainty. You're going to have to live in a way that brings evidence to your nervous system, to your brain, to your intellect of there's a reason why it makes sense to live this way. It makes sense to believe this, right? And so that's how I would go about it. You can make every version of this medicine. The person that doesn't go and drastically changes their life and says, you know, even in the face of fear, and again, this is not medical advice, I'm a person on social media sharing information, answering questions based off of some experience and my own investigation, research, and living and working with patients. So this is not telling you what to do, but I'm saying hypothetically, if there was somebody who didn't want to go get it, wanted to stare, you know, had a symptom that usually scared them and didn't want to go get it and still drastically change their life. Because the other thing is, why do we have to wait until we're scared to death, literally, to go make radical changes in our life, or to go start choosing our life, or to start falling in love with our life, or to start doing the things we know we need to do? Even if you changed 3 things that you didn't respect yourself for doing yesterday, or you didn't respect yourself because you didn't do them yesterday, if you started doing that today, even without a scare, right? That's why I say, don't wait until it's life or death to start choosing your life, because it's already medicating you. And the whole point is the living of life. That's why we're here. It's the whole reason why we want to feel good, because we want to do things, we want to experience things, we want to, you know, enjoy this life, because it's literally, you don't know how much time you've got. It's so fun. It's so there's so much to experience. So you don't want your health to be something that's keeping you from experiencing, but then you all have to also understand that experiencing feeds back into your health, right? It's this like beautiful cosmic omnidirectional touching dance love affair that is life, and how this body interfaces with life, right? So make that scenario medicine. Do y'all have any questions, follow-up questions off of this huge question? Because there's questions within questions, and there's ways that you could take this thing. But the second part of this question, while you answer that question, or if you have questions off of what we just said in the explanation, or want further clarification, you can put those in the comments below, and I will scroll through those in a second. But then the second part to this question is, okay, should I go get the scan or just keep applying the truths? I would say take out that or and say and. No matter what you do in that first section, if you go get the scan, if you don't go get the scan, if you go get the labs and imaging again, if you don't go get the labs and imaging again, and keep applying the truths. Why? Because if you have 3 days in between the day that you got scared and had the symptom and the day that you go get the scan, why not improve those 3 days instead of sit there or get worse those 3 days by just being afraid, not doing anything, and worrying and pickling yourself with fear and anxiety and the chemistry that matches that? I would have the mindset of like, okay, well, I'm going to do it because I need it, right? And I'm not going to judge myself for needing it, because I understand that the whole world is set up to make me need everything and to trust everything except for myself, right? So I understand that I want to go do it, so I'm going to go do it. And then I'm going to quit judging myself, and I'm going to make that scenario medicine, and I'm going to see how and why I pick myself apart emotionally, psychologically. I'm going to see where I stay in a cycle of fear. I'm going to go and try to understand myself and see how, even if it comes out positive or negative or whatever, my response, and then how quickly I want to latch on to fear again. And then I'm going to go and observe how much I change my life and how committed I really am to changing and getting a different result. And if that were me, I would start the day that I had, you know, the fear, and be like, what can I change, right? If I'm having to wait to go get the scan, because that's the other thing. Isn't it interesting that pay attention to how alarmed they are, right? You'll get your scan in a week. You'll get your scan in 3 weeks. You'll get your scan in... So the urgency that you feel, kind of see how even they're responding to you sometimes too, to kind of get a different perspective, right? And then use all of this to empower yourself. Schedule the scan, do everything you know, follow the rules to a T. If you're somebody who has symptoms that are enough to scare you, you need to never be breaking the rules. Period. You don't get to break the rules intelligently like everybody else. Why? Because you need bigger changes. If you're creating symptoms in the human body so severe that it could scare you into a state of needing to go to urgent care or something like that, there should be no days off for you. It should match the level, the intensity that your body is asking you to change, right? So you should have no days where you're breaking any rules of nutrition, light, sleep, energy, as best you can. You should try to be doing them as best you can every single day, from that moment before, even if you could, until you get the results that you want, even with scans in between. So I would say the second component of that question, or that second piece, is go do whatever you need to do to bring yourself true peace. Don't bullshit yourself. Don't try to raise yourself to standards that you can't match emotionally, right? It's your game, not theirs. I don't care what somebody else says or how passionately they say it. Your confidence has to be within you. Your peace has to be produced by you, or else it's synthetic. It's not going to land. It's like somebody else drinking, water for you. Well, that's great for them. Did absolutely nothing for you. So feeding off of other people's certainty, doing something because what would, Ted do? You shouldn't give not two F's what Ted would do, because Ted is not you. I don't care how passionate they were. I don't care how aggressive they were in the delivery of what they say or what they stand for. If it's not you, don't make decisions based off of what they would do. They're not in your body. They don't have the same thoughts. They don't have the same background. They don't have the same sensations. They don't have, if it's not you, it's not you. So you've got to make a decision honestly and be brutally honest, because there's this thing with, gritty type personalities, and I'm a gritty person too, and super hard-headed, like the most hard-headed. But you've got to use that to your advantage. You've got to be hard-headed in alignment with you, not hard-headed against you. And you've got to have the wisdom to know where you're at, and to know that you performing and pretending to have the certainty that somebody else has, or even to have the certainty that you wish you had, is going to go against you in that moment. It's better to be exactly how you are, exactly who you are, and be like, I am not confident in this enough yet. That's okay. It's okay. Right now, would I go to surf the biggest waves in the world? No. It's not because I can't surf. I can't surf. I mean, I could try, but why would I do that to myself, right? So know where you're at by being honest with yourself. And then when you're not, like we talked last week, when you're not in that moment of, now we're, on the court, now we're in the big game, now we're in that moment of really being tested. When you're not in that moment, then you're working your butt off and finding all of those gaps in your belief system, and finding all of those gaps, and why is my life not in alignment with my beliefs? And of course I wouldn't find certainty and comfort in a belief system that wasn't lived. Of course I wouldn't. I would. If you watch somebody else doing that, if they said one thing and did another, it really starts changing how you see them. And it can only happen so many times until you have a complete lack of trust in them. So put this on you. Would you hold yourself to that same standard, and then be gracious and be like, of course, I don't trust this just yet. So do what you need to do to go find peace. But the caveat and the little asterisk to this, the top part of this question, is you also know that if you go in there, you've got to think worst case scenario, right? And best case scenario, both, right? Because all of them are potentials. And depending on the word given, if it's worst case scenario, you've got to be prepared to engage with that industry and know how you're going to do that. Because, again, depending on the word that you get, they're very forceful. It's a very traumatic, very fearful moment where you're the most exposed, the most raw, and then you're slapped with a word, and then you're immediately given the solution with urgency. And so you've got, if you already know your boundaries within that, that's when you're going to have to employ them, right? If you go and utilize these things. But again, you've got to be honest with you. You've got to be honest about how you're living. You've got to be honest about what you need. You've got to be brutally honest with what you want, because that's the other thing. The other thing that I really feel like needs to be added to this question is kind of what we prefaced this whole thing with today. There's no wrong way. There's no wrong way. The only thing that's wrong is you doing something that counters what you truly believe in. So don't break your heart, right? And don't punish your mind. and live in alignment with who you really are, what you really believe. And if you want to believe differently, then you're going to have to put in the work to match it, right? And just always put it on, like, you know, I grew up around athletics because my dad, growing up, was a coach before he changed his profession. And so just always put it on that, like, athlete type mindset of, you wouldn't expect, you know, somebody that never lifted weights to go bench press 350 pounds, right? So you're trying to bench press 350 pounds by having a severe symptom and not going and utilizing the thing that you've outsourced so much power and trust into. So what part of my message here is, know yourself, be honest with yourself. Don't contradict what you say you want. Don't contradict what you say you believe. And then the evidence is where the magic is. Are you living it? Not just talking. You don't believe in what you talk about. You believe in what you live. And to understand the difference of that is astronomical in the effects that you're going to receive. So a lot of people are talking, reading. You don't believe in that stuff. You want to believe in that stuff. What you believe in? Let me see how you live. Let me see how you respond. Let me see how you react. Let me see your knee-jerk reactions when you feel something, see something, experience something. That's the real stuff. And to be able to see it, you've got to not judge it. You've got to not be like, well, this person, you know, or like even like judging compared to me. I'm putting this out there because I have put years and years and years and years and years and years into living this. And then into working with other people and implementing it in a living way. And then so I'm a different organism than you, right? I am swimming in this all day long because of the nature of what I do. I'm always seeing miracles. I'm always seeing people changing their life and their body changing, and seeing different things, changing their mind, changing their relationship, it being reflected into the body, people following the rules and it quote unquote working. So you can't use comparison as another avenue to extract comfort, because it's going to do the exact opposite. You've got to know exactly where you're at, your level of preparation, and you can't try to put yourself up against, you know, if you just started a sport and you're going to go and try to compete with a pro athlete. Why? I mean, the learning curve is steep, and I support that. But challenge yourself, sure. Torment yourself, that's something totally different. So make every action you take medicine by how you engage with it, how you implement it, and just the totality of who you are as you move through these things. Because again, there's no wrong way to do life, right? Because I get questions all the time, even about, you know, surgeries and hormones and medications, and are they wrong for doing it? And I wouldn't even know how to answer that question. Is it wrong to the person that chose to do it? I don't know. Like, it depends on the individual. What do they believe in? What do they live? What are their values? There's so much to all of this stuff. So there's a difference, again, between a right answer and a true answer. So that would be how to identify that. And then there's a difference in how the body truly works, and then how we're learning that the body works and trying to force it, manipulate it into submission. And when you've done that long enough, which a lot of you are here because you've tried so many other things and it doesn't work, right? So y'all call me the Wild West of this like natural world. I'll take it. I'm from West Texas anyways. But what it really is just the simplest of, this is how human physiology works when exposed to light. This is how human physiology works if you want to digest a meal. This is how human physiology works if you want to get deep, restful sleep, right? And it's not all this biohacking, because a lot of even the biohacking, some of it you'll see will fall into alignment. Some of it is manipulating the body because of misalignment. And to start being able to see the difference in those two is when the understanding of this really is going to click in. And that's, again, the point of this. So I'm going to pause there because, again, this question is so profound, so deep, so many things held within this that it's worth this whole time here today. So I'm going to circle back and go through, I wish there was like music that would play as I scroll. This is this awkward part of me scrolling I don't know if you've ever done a live, but like it's all just like underneath. And so you have to scroll and just have a little bit of awkwardness. I'm so good at awkwardness though. I'm just awkward in front of you guys. Okay. Okay, let's see if this landed. I'm reading. Should I read out loud with that or like dance? Mm-hmm. Okay. There's got to be a better way. If you guys know a better way, just let me know. So this, somebody said that they tell you that imaging in labs is to prevent ... So labs and imaging don't prevent anything. So if we're just practically, like super practical thinking here, labs and imaging are like taking a snapshot in time, right? And the body is so dynamic that even by the time you get the labs and imaging, they've already changed. If you've giggled, if you got scared by the needle, and then even when it comes to labs, there's so many different things that can interfere with the lab results, right? If you take certain B vitamins before, like there's so many different factors when it comes to even the sensitivity and specificity of the results, and just there's so much. So when it comes to imaging is a little bit more of just like a picture, but the body is still so dynamic that things are always changing, right? So there's never even 2 moments that the body is identical. It's so much more dynamic than that, and it really starts blowing your mind when you see how dynamic and how quickly the body changes. Back when I had a lot of healing for my skin, one thing that was really cool to see, sometimes wasn't fun, but was to see how much my skin would change day to day, morning to evening, noon to night. It would blow my mind. Sometimes it would be like so frustrating if you've ever dealt with any skin presentations. Just how much the symptoms would increase within like a window of time. You're like, where did you come from? Like, how did that happen? Like I blinked and some new thing came up. So one of the things that I really did back when I was healing was to look at the truths, even in the inconveniences. So what I mean by that is it was not fun or convenient for like a new healing expression to show up on my face. It drove me wonderfully in the direction that I needed to be, right? To truth, massive truth. So when those things would show up, I would get so pissed off and just be like, why can't I have normal skin? Why can't I have the skin of like the people that can go to bed with like makeup and pizza on their face? It's literal pizza. I remember like being at like a sleepover and like one of my friends was like, fell asleep with pizza on her face. And I'm like, how? It's cool. I'm happy for you. But how, right? But when I started changing how I looked at everything, I started asking better questions. And then I was like, holy cow. So my skin can change that quickly. True or false? True. How do I know? It literally just did. It literally just produced another blister, another pimple, another sore. Like I wasn't even watching it and it did this, right? And then when you flip it around, the reverse is true. It can heal that quickly too. And when you start implementing something that's a truth and you meet the need that the body actually has, instead of just being like, oh, let me do an acne protocol. Well, it's not acne. Let me do a blister protocol. It's not. It's you in your life in a very unique combination of all of these experiences coming and playing, interfacing with all of the things you ate, drank, tasted, how much you like all of it in a dance that's you. And that's what you've got to change. You're not manipulating this to try to act like that's not happening. You're changing your life, and that's going to change this. And when you start doing that, you're like, oh my gosh, how quickly can it change? How quickly can it change, right? So when you're experiencing it in the other direction, I know it can be a really hard, heavy time of like, how quickly can it change? We just went from bad to worse, just like that. Okay, so there's a truth tucked in there. Can the body change rapidly based off of what it's interfacing with in the inputs that are given? Absolutely. Where else can you find evidence of that? Can you take a prescription medication? Can you even use an illicit drug? Can you have a shot of alcohol? Can you, and it changes? Yes. So it's not just changing rapidly in the most atrocious, worst direction you could ever imagine because the body is just this awful thing. No. It's responding to the cause, right? So if your cause is something else, can the body change rapidly? Yes. I don't know if you're here. If you're here, you can chime in. One of my patients, she had lifelong eczema, and we changed some things. She started following the rules, of course, and then we changed some very specific things in her life, and within 3 months, right? Lifelong, and then it changes in 3 months. Yeah. It can, right? The body can change rapidly, and it's not just in the direction of, decline, decay, pathology. Think about how you're even here right now. How are you even here if it's always just getting worse? How is that even realistically, rationally possible? So much is going right. Everything that your body is doing is in the direction of healing, because if it wasn't, you couldn't be here. And not just like, this is literal, practical, like go into the science of it. Could you be here if all of your body was just going to shit every given moment? Literally, like let's not be, what y'all call me, positive Polly. She's got great chemistry though, if we're being scientific about it. But even if we're not being positive Polly, realistic, Randall, is that a thing? It literally wouldn't be possible to survive it if your body was this thing that's just you can't trust, and it's always getting worse, and it's always changing in the direction of pathology. You wouldn't survive that. You wouldn't survive that. The reason, like, you can even we'll go into this, I haven't decided, it might be a subscription topic, but when you see family members not living quote unquote healthy, and they are living into their 90s, and you're just like, how do they do this? That's a testament to some of these truths. These truths are saturating your existence, but you're not looking for them. You're just looking for the one symptom that's stressing you out, or the one symptom that's the most bothersome, or the one thing that you're just focused on, not realizing that everything is working for you. Everything is moving in the direction of healing, even if that healing expression creates a symptom that is not comfortable, right? So comfort is not the same thing as healing, right? There's so many directions that could go in. Okay, so I think I answered that question. It's kind of hard when I don't have you in front of me. Yeah, so just a clarification. No part of this conversation is that you should feel a severe symptom and not do anything about it. There's literally no part of my message that ever has that as a component. It's not have a severe symptom and just positively think your way out of it, or have a severe symptom and think a different thought. That's not what we're saying here. We're saying there's a reason you're having that symptom. You've got to understand what all interfaces with the human body. We remove variables, because just like 2 things or like 15 different things could cause constipation, 15 to a million different things could cause a rapid heartbeat. 15 to a million different things could cause joint inflammation. So you're removing variables by following those rules. The rules are what we cover in those master classes, so that you understand how to actually navigate them in a very simple way without having to know everything there is to know about human physiology, right? So it's never like, oh, I have a severe symptom, your life is your medicine. Like, that's not what it is. Your life is your medicine is not like, I'm going to go tan in the sun and cuddle a kid. I mean, that's good too, but you get what I'm saying. No, it's a very active way of living. Your life is your medicine, when you truly grasp it, is the most active, most intentional, most deliberate, most committed way to live a life, because you start realizing you're not the victim of anything. And that if you want to change something, that you absolutely can, but you've got to match the need with the action. So the person that said that it's just like go about your life experiencing negative responses, no. If you're experiencing a negative response, any type of symptom in your body is saying, hey, can we change? Right? Not, hey, we're screwed up, but hey, we're right, can we change? Right? So then our rightness can be a positive or pleasant experience, right? It should make sense, right? Everything, my favorite thing to say always is make it make sense, right? In relationships, that's fun for you guys sometimes. Like, it doesn't make sense, make it make sense. But for this stuff, think that way. Does it make sense? And then if you're working with a practitioner, my favorite thing is whatever practitioner you're working with, have them make it make sense to you. Your body is not an experiment for medicine. Your body is not something that we practice on. I hate that way of thinking. If you're practicing on somebody, why? Practice on yourself, right? Then deliver something that's true, right? So if you're dealing with your body, your life, always make it make sense before you let that engage with you. So if you're dealing even with a traditional doctor, ask them questions. That's what they're there for. You're not there to be a thing that we work on for us. We're there to serve you. Just like you take your car to the mechanic, right? So flip it around, and then until it makes sense to you, until you have peace of mind, peace of heart, peace of body with what you're about to agree to, then have questions. Right? Again, the other thing that I say a lot in relationships, I've got questions, right? I've got questions until we make it make sense, because I like things to make sense and I like things to work, right? So have that level of thinking, and then ask questions, make it make sense, okay? All right. So somebody put just like a different version of fear in one of these questions. So when you're dealing with fear, I always like to literally go look up placebo effect, the truth of it, and the science behind it, and use it. So if you're in a situation that you're afraid of an outcome, the more you focus on that, the less beneficial that is for you. But you got to also know that the brain is wired to pay attention to things that we're afraid of. So you can't condemn your body for doing what it's designed to do, but you can be the captain of your ship and redirect your focus in the direction that actually serves you. And that's a very practical, literal thing that you can do. So if there's an outcome that you don't want, I wouldn't give it my attention. I don't care if that was, a home change, an outcome in my physical body. Your mind is yours. And so if you should use it. And if you understand the placebo effect, even to the slightest degree, people talk about it all the time, but who's using it? Everybody's using it at any given breath. And if you're not actively in control of that, it's probably working against you. So it's not, again, wishful thinking. It's utilize your faculties to the degree that you want the result, right? So if you want a different outcome, I wouldn't focus on the one that you don't want. I would spend all of my time, just like if you don't want your body to be a certain way, I would spend more time thinking about how my body wanted, or how I wanted my body to be, and matching it with the life that would get it, than being afraid of how I didn't want my body to be and spending so much time just saturating myself in fear but calling it learning. So you, again, be very honest with yourself. Understand a fear is a fear. There's nothing wrong with it. There's a purpose to it. Your brain's going to want to pay attention to it because it should. That's how it works. Utilizing your mind, right? We will do a mind masterclass. I know a lot of you are wanting that. But again, I think it might have to be 3 because there's so much misinformation out there. And again, I like everything to make sense. I like it to be practical. And then when I do these masterclasses, I'm taking all of this information and trying to imagine every possible version of you and trying to distill it down to where you can work yourself through it, right? Versus when I get to work with you, we get to be like laser focused on, all right, give me the juice. Tell me your truths. And then let's alter and figure out how to get where you want to go with what you got, right? So it's very different. So when I do these master classes, they aren't just these like, oh, let me show up and show you my cute outfit. It's a lot of like mind squeezing, and I came up with them. So I know a lot of people are using them now, which is fine, but make sure they're using them appropriately and in a true way. So it's literally like so much information distilled down in a very simple way, and then you using it is the value of it, right? Is actually, you've got to use it. You can't just be like, oh, I know the rules. Use them, and then that's how you get those results. Okay, so the topic that we're discussing, for those of you that showed up late, was just a question that I got from last week, and it'll be at the start of this. But it was basically the conversation on, you know, when you're in that in-between time of utilizing and thinking this way and believing this way, but still having severe symptoms and needing to utilize scans and imaging for peace of mind, right? And how that's not bad. You're not bad. You've got to know exactly where you're at and then make changes accordingly. Yeah. So I always love that follow-up too. So, and then what? So you're going to go do it, and then what? And then if you get these, especially if you're a parent, it's a totally different ballgame. We are not going to get into that right here. I almost opened a can of worms for another time. Okay. Yeah, so everything that you want to do is really putting yourself back in the driver's seat, right? And putting yourself in power, because anytime you're not in power, it's not true. Think about that. Anytime you're outsourcing your health, your wellness, does that even make any sense? Like if you were to explain it, I always go back to like the sassiest version of me, like 13-year-old me before she was swimming in all of the things, right? Of like, make it make sense to her. Because she was very much like, that doesn't make any sense, right? Make it make sense. I got questions. And if you can make it make sense to a kid, then that's probably going to make it make sense to you. But if you can't make it make sense to a kid, if there's all of these exclusions and, you know, caveats, and the kid's going to be like, yeah, they don't know what they're talking about, right? So do it to yourself when it comes to these things. Make it make sense. Simplify, right? And then take action when it's true to you. And again, not in comparison to somebody else, but to you. Okay. I know, we're going to do the Mind Masterclass. I promise you, I am working on it. But like I said, I take everything and I squeeze it and I distill it, and then I organize it again, and I organize it again, and we simplify it again, and we simplify it again. Because to try to get my lifetime of knowledge and information and wisdom and experience into a 3-hour masterclass is a lot of work. So I don't think I could get this one down to that. So we might have to do 3, just because it's a lot. The mind is such a cool, powerful thing. Okay. We are friends. You guys are so welcome. So changing the mind really, yeah, it's such a big thing. I'm reading. I'm meditating. Let's take a 30-second meditation and join me. Okay, so you guys are asking again, like if there's a severe condition, you've got to understand that it's not saying don't do anything, right? But it is saying I would go and make sure you're implementing truth, not just a diet, but understanding how digestion actually works, not just, you know, supplementing and using herbs to put yourself in a state where you can actually facilitate sleep, but understanding the rules of how and when and why a body would actually fall asleep and everything that goes into it. So you're not manipulating yourself into what you want the body to do, but you're living in a way where that's the outcome, right? And then you're going to continue that chemistry for a sustained amount of time to accumulate those effects, right? You've accumulated up until this point a lifetime of chemistry that has created whatever that condition, fill in the blank, that you're currently experiencing. So you've taken a lifetime to accumulate the outcome of that chemistry. So you're going to have to accumulate some time, even though the body can change rapidly, of truthful implementation of how the body actually works and what it's actually needing, right? And remember, your life is your medicine is not just, we handle those basics, the nutrition, the light, the sleep, which is actually a secondary to the light, and then energy, which is kind of stress and energy. We handle those because those are the basics. Those are the fundamental things that help you remove variables. And then when you remove those variables, you're no longer learning about nutrition. You're no longer learning about light. You're no longer trying to hack those areas. You're using all of your conscious mind to be in your life and start looking honestly and truthfully about how you respond, how you relate, how you react, how you engage, how you are living all of those other moments that aren't quote unquote medicine. And that's what so many people miss. That's why they're like, I'm eating perfectly, I'm taking all the right supplements. Well, there's so much more of your day that's doing something different. You could not undo the toxicity of your day with 3 meals. You couldn't undo the toxicity of your day with 15,000 supplements. That's just not the game that you're playing, right? But that's the game that's being sold. And so that's the difference. So I would make all of the changes. I would be massively committed. No days off. If you have a really severe thing, you're not taking any days off. You're not breaking the rules intelligently. You're not breaking the rules, right? So when I started this, I had so many quote unquote incurable things and was really not feeling well in my physical body. And there were no days off. There were no cute pizza dates. There were no, ice cream this. There were no, not because those things were quote unquote bad, because I was trying to accumulate the effects that I needed the most. And those things, when you take that nutrition class, you'll see how do you know? You'll see. And then you make decisions, best of the best, following those rules. And that's when you speed up the time, right? So if you're needing a lot of change, you should have the mentality of, let's go. No days off, no moments off. Why? Not because you're being punished, because you're choosing, because you want it, right? I want it so badly. When you want something so badly, you will move mountains to get it. But a lot of people don't want to give up the comfort of the things that are creating the problems in their life. And so you've got to get uncomfortable in a direction that changes your life. That's why I say that. Get uncomfortable in a direction that will absolutely change your life, and you will remove the need of all this manipulation based, I'm going to try to force my body into acting like we live a different life, right? Okay. About to have to wrap up here. People getting mad and pissed when you change. That's them, not you. But work on you and how much you pay attention to it. Okay. So, what time is it? I'm gonna have to hop out here in a little bit. This language here is very fascinating to me. So the fear of a potential diagnosis. Okay, let's just simplify that really quick before we wrap up with today's little thought bubble time. Fear of a potential diagnosis. Okay, so let's kind of break it down a little bit. What is let's take a super simple diagnosis. And if you've ever looked up, when we were in medical school, one of the funniest things that we would do, we had no time to be doing this, but was to look up all like the ICD-10 codes and stuff like that, to look at all of the random diagnosing terms and all of the different things that you could put in there for insurance purposes, and you would be blown away at some of the stuff that you could be diagnosed with. So this is not even an oversimplification. You could go completely absurd with this example, but fear of a potential diagnosis. Let's just take that phrase. Let's remove diagnosis and let's put in a super simple diagnosis, a cut. Fear of the potential of a cut. So you would be like, well, that's stupid. I know. Unless what? You're a person that had a profession where you got a lot of cuts, or you were always doing something where you were around knives, or so again, how are you living? What are you doing that's creating the physiology to where that would be the appropriate outcome, right? The appropriate effect to that cause. And then change there, because if you're not somebody that's around knives all the time, the fear of a potential cut, like most of us aren't walking around afraid of that, right? If you're living a life where, say, you were always around sharp edges and knives, and okay, then maybe, but that's as simple as everything. So in my world, that's how I see it. If somebody were to be like, are you not afraid of getting XYZ condition? Like, no, because I don't live a life that would produce that, right? And if I started experiencing symptoms, like, your body starts whispering to you before it screams at you, right? Like I always say, it bubbles before it boils. And I always use that, like, the frog example, right? So your body is it's not just gonna shock you. It's gonna tell you and 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 hold you and heal you and tell you and hold you and heal you and tell you and hold you and kiss your forehead and tell you one more time. And then when it just can't tell you that in that way anymore, it has to tell you in a louder way. Not because it hates you, but because it loves you, right? So I always, when I was going through my healing at the worst part of it all, I really turned a corner when I started seeing it as a relationship. And that's when I wrote a lot of the things that you guys might be familiar with, of like the love story, that your body's love language is unconditional healing. I wrote those words in a time of some of my hardest nights, some of the roughest days, some of my scariest moments. That's where those words came from. And so when I saw it that way, it softened every part of me. And that's how I knew, because then I thought all the way back of all of those years that it whispered different things to me. And I looked away and I manipulated and I hid and I covered up and I suppressed and until it just couldn't say it in the same way and had to tell me in a different way. But then when I realized that it was love, right? It literally knocked me over in the most profound way, in that the day after, nothing was the same. And so maybe that is how we'll wrap up here today. When you see it, when you see that every little symptom was a whisper of the greatest love of your life, right? If you have an image of somebody you love the most, imagine them calling you and being like, hey, I need you to change this. I need you to change this. I need you to change this. I need you to pay attention to this. I need you to see how you feel when you do this. I need you to see, and imagine them calling you. Not because they hated you, because they were trying to help you. And then when you actually put this on your body and you feel it, I literally will never forget that day. When you feel it, you're like, oh my gosh, I get I get it. And none of it is wrong. None of it is wrong, and it is all perfect. And it's not this like, oh, I'm going to say it. But like, think about your relationships too. If you've ever had a beautiful relationship, how even your hard times are for you both. And like when you sit in those messy, hard times with somebody that genuinely cares, not somebody that's there to just disrupt and cause problems, but somebody who genuinely takes you as themselves, right? That's what love is, not me versus you, or I'm going to try to extract something from you, but I'm going to sit here with you, right? I'm going to think about things with you as a part of me, right? And when you can see your body that way, it literally will soften every part of you, and your questions will have to change, right? When a lover is asking you to change something versus an enemy, how would you receive that call? And then how would you take action, right? I think that might be a good place to end today. All right. Okay. There are a lot of good questions again here at the end. So I'll put in the prompt again up in my stories if you want to add some of these questions. Like the one I'm looking at right here is a really good question. I might take note, because whoever you were last week that had the really good question, you made me go listen to me again to find the question. But this question I'm looking at right here, from your experience, what stops people from following the rules? If you could put this question in the prompt so I can have it. If not, I will come back to this video and I will listen to it and I will find it, because I think this would be a good one for next week, because then there's a follow-up part of what keeps them from committing to themselves and tapping into their willpower. That's a big, juicy, yummy question. Okay. All of the rules of nutrition are in the Nutrition Masterclass. All of the rules of light are in the Light Masterclass. All of the rules of sleep are in the Sleep Masterclass. And the rules of stress are in that Energy Masterclass. And energy, right? We went more towards energy in the world of hormones specifically, because I just see that as the biggest driver from the people I see. If you've never taken a Light Masterclass, or I was reading light. And all right, we're wrapping up for the day. If you've never taken one of my masterclasses, I would say start with the Nutrition Masterclass. You'll see how it's different. You'll see kind of how to rethink everything. And then I've had a lot of people just take the Nutrition Masterclass. They implement it, they live it. And then because of how it changes how you think, you can put it on light and you can think yourself through it, or you could put it on sleep. And I just see so many people messed up within their gut, and it's really important to know that your gut isn't the root cause, but the cause of something else that is the root cause, and a lot of it is people breaking the rules of nutrition. So I would say take the Nutrition Masterclass, implement it, and see how it changes you, because it really is cool. And it's going to be one of those things, because a lot of you are like, how do you let go of like dieting and all of that stuff? When you follow the rules of that Nutrition Masterclass, you'll see like it just takes you depending on your mood and what you have available, and it just makes it softer, life softer, less rigid. Okay, all right, I'm gonna scroll through here really quick, make sure. So I'm talking about WebMD. I would stay so far away from WebMD. Billy's downstairs. I know. Okay. All right. That's who is that? That's some character in a movie. I don't even know. Okay. So, gonna wrap up for today. I think that was a good bookend. If you weren't here in the beginning, this guy, my love affair, he's phenomenal. And instead of learning about your health, I would go and read poetry. Let some other part of you talk. I will tell him you said hi. All right. Okay. Thank you all for being here. We'll do this again. Like I said, I'll put up the prompt in the little question box, or not question box, the stories. So if you don't go into the stories, it's just literally my little face bubble with the colorful wheel around it. And you just click on it, and then it's going to have like a little prompt, and then you just type in your question there. And you keep them kind of concise because it doesn't let you have too long of a question. Oh yeah, The Three Marriages from David Whyte. I've actually read that. I was given that at a talk, and I read it, and it was so, so good. All right. Well, it's good to see you all. Thank you for being here. Fall in love. Or just allow the love that you already have. All right, bye everyone.